Did you get out of town this weekend?
I did not. No.
Oh,
No.
for some
we
reason I
stayed
thought
home.
you had some
That was
plans
a
to
that
do
was a
something.
vague plan that I
Mm.
put out into the world, only to yank it back almost immediately because the place I really wanted to take the girls to, the Oregon Trail Museum, is closed for.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. You mentioned that. Yeah.
And then we're still in the middle of this stupid Omicron spike.
Oh,
So,
you guys still are, huh?
yeah, it just didn't feel. It's not something I want to futz with.
Yeah. Yeah. But do you know that Dana and Kate and their husbands went on a little weekend excursion to
Oh, good.
a McMenamins, is that the right way?
Yeah, that's right.
McMenamins
Yeah, those
Lodge
are great.
on the
Mhm.
Columbia River.
Yeah, those are good. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so I
good. I
haven't
mean-
heard how it went. I got a couple of beautiful photos. It looked like
Ah.
it was gorgeous out there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, depending on what day they were out there. Yeah, we've had it was a nice sunny um Saturday. And yesterday was just, yeah, so I went for a hike. That was nice. So I got out.
nice.
Maui and I got out for a little walkabout.
Where'd you
Well,
go?
it was only 23 here, but we got out for some walkabouts because it was sunny enough. But it was very cold.
Yeah.
But where'd you go, Astrid?
Powell Butte. Kind of
Hmm.
your neck of the woods, Chris.
Where's that at?
Right? And like an idiot, I forgot the dehydrator again. It's like I've now been out that way a few times, and I just need
Oh,
to swing by your house and actually drop that off.
Yeah, Dawn and I went for a run up on Powell Butte Saturday morning with someone,
Oh,
a friend.
I was there in the afternoon.
Yeah, it
Nice.
was a beautiful day.
Yeah, it's really gorgeous. It's good running up there, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's the views are incredible. It's a
What
challenge.
is the trail like? Is it like a gravel trail or?
Single track. There's a gravel circle on top. Well, not really gravel, but like an old 2-track. There used to be an old farm up there.
Mhm.
Cattle grazing. We actually know the guy that grew up there.
No way.
Yes.
Really? That's cool.
There's, where you drive in on 162nd,
Yeah.
and to the left, there's an old farmhouse in there. There used to be the old dairy, and it's not Alpenrose. There's another one. People who've been here long. There was a different dairy farm. I can't. So he grew up there, and he would go up there and round up the cattle. And he actually knows where our house is because it was there when he was living there, our house. So he's like, "Oh yeah, I've pulled cattle off of your property."
Isn't that cool?
That's cool.
Yeah, it was really when we first discovered that randomly. Dawn, well, you guys may have met Gail Maxwell. Mary, have you met Gail?
Yes.
Yeah, so Gail Maxwell's husband grew up on Powell Butte. And so Dawn met this woman through Fred Meyer. And then, I don't know, years afterwards, she meets her husband and they're talking about where you live. And he's like, "Oh, I used to take care of cattle up there." So yeah, it's kind of funny.
That is funny.
Yeah. Small world.
Did not know that.
No, and neither were we. So it's kind of, we talk about that. I mean, who knows what your neighborhood was 100 years ago type of thing, I guess there's
But
probably
Chris,
history.
isn't behind your house like the original farmhouse or that? Isn't that your house? That it's a property that you can kind of see across your back fence. That was the original old farmhouse.
I don't know what the original was in this area. This is one of the older homes in the area. So
Oh, yours is okay.
yeah, it was built in 24.
Maybe I'm
So
getting
it's-
your house and Astrid's house mixed up because maybe it's Astrid's house that you can see out the back gate, the original house. Is that right?
Yeah.
No, so in our house, it's kind of no, we are the original house. Well,
You're the
pay
original
attention.
house. Oh, is
Which
the
would make
back?
sense. I mean, your house looks.
Our neighborhood was a bunch of gentleman farms, right? So our house, when you look out our back door, that blue house with the Dutch gable, that used to be the carriage house to our house.
Oh,
And
that's what
then
I'm thinking of.
looking
Yeah.
across where I'm pointing, across 43rd Street, the two itty bitty little houses on the corner with Mitchell and 43rd across from us, that
Mhm.
used to be the chicken coop to our house.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah, so the
The
whole
woman with
thing.
a great garden.
Hmm?
I don't remember her, Linda or
Oh,
Lynn?
Linda, yeah. Linda
Yeah.
and her daughter, Erin.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, your house is, it's so much older, and I mean, all the other houses have a different look. I mean, it's kind of obvious where, yeah, there's a few old homes here, but It's kind of neat. What year was your house built, Astrid?
1905-ish.
Okay, yeah. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. And yeah, there were lots of old, very mature fruit trees all over this neighborhood. Still are. I mean, we had a 100-year-old cherry tree in our yard that got waterlogged one year about 15 years ago now, 10, 15 years ago, and then froze and broke apart like this, like a big V, and half of it fell against our house and only broke the living room window, thank goodness. And then
Wow.
the rest
that's
went
lucky.
boom, boom, just made a big thump in the yard.
Oh,
I've seen an aerial photo of this area from our neighbor. He grew up in this house, and so he showed it to us, and you could tell like it's our house. There's a couple houses down that was here, but it's basically just all pasture land.
Mhm.
With, maybe each person owned like 10, 15 acres type of thing.
And it's funny, it's not that long ago. I know on my street, the house that is now, they have a little house behind them, but they were the original house on this street and they were the farmhouse.
Mhm.
And when they started buying up land and kind of changing it, the people wanted to break apart the lot because it was like almost a double and a half lot.
Mhm.
And they ended up chopping up the lot, which is a shame because now, everybody's just squished along. But
Yeah.
it's kind of fun to know the history. And that was
Mhm.
while I've been here. But
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Sorry, I'm trying to get my thing sorted. So yeah, tomorrow.
But you could do a Celtic one today too.
I
Back to
could,
back.
yeah, if I can find it. Just a second.
Yeah, Ross, you're on mute. We can't hear you, Ross.
I got it. I found it, Ro.
I got it. Yeah, yeah.
There you
There's
go.
one for today and one for tomorrow.
Got it.
Because I think last year I discovered this thing that I've never heard before, and now suddenly everyone's talking about it. Like it's existed for hundreds of years, called Imbolg,
Mm-hmm.
which is the night before. Well, it coincides with St. Bridget's Day, which is obviously a Christian day, but it's supposed to be like the beginning of spring, even though most people don't consider spring to be until the middle of March in the Northern Hemisphere. This kind of 1st of February or the last day of January is kind of a Celtic beginning of spring.
wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking, indeed. I think it's just, I think it's a bit of kind of hippy dippy Celtic stuff.
Mhm.
But
And what
it's
happens
lovely.
on
And
the-
last year, the Bridget of our mantle made all of us, I know it was at least me, you and Dana that were like
Yeah.
sobbing at the end of reading
Yeah.
Bridget of the Mantle.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So I went.
you went and got another one, huh?
I went and got another one, or maybe
Nice.
it's the same one. I think it's slightly different, but probably the same. I go on all these like Celtic pagan druid kind of websites and get all this stuff from
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to text this one to Dana because she texted me she can't come today, but
Oh,
yeah.
she will be very sorry. But she has one tomorrow. So Ro, I was listening to, I know I always talk about podcasts like they're my friends, but I was listening to my friend on Snap Judgment, which is a podcaster out of Oakland. And he had the best story about a guy who is now in like his 70s. And he was in Wales, and he basically wanted to be a radio DJ, kind of inspired by like the 50s, 60s, like fast talking American DJs that played, not really rock and roll music, but like soul and like funk and that kind of stuff. And he couldn't get a BBC license. So like in the 60s, he set up a sound studio in his garage, and he just broadcast basically to himself. He put a little speaker into his house so his wife could hear, and he called it Radio 77, and he like broadcast to himself
Mhm.
for like literally decades. And at different points he like brought on other neighbors to do who were interested
Oh,
in
wow.
like doing DJing, and he tried to go be on some of the illegal ships that would
Yeah.
broadcast in that
Like
era.
Radio Caroline,
Yeah, Radio Caroline and stuff. So it was kind of, modeled after that. And he actually, I don't know, you should listen to it, but
Yeah. I'd love to.
yeah, it's such an amazing, well, I would recommend anybody listen to it, but it's such an amazing story. And they have some clips of him from that time when he was like literally just broadcasting, making up news and jingles and
That's so cute.
playing music, and here's something to blah, blah, blah. Like I can't even imitate that DJ
Without
kinda-
without knowing that he has no audience.
knowing that he has
Yeah.
no audience. Yeah.
Ever.
That
It's
he has
different like
zero
doing
audience.
a podcast. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Oh
weird.
my gosh.
Yeah. And at some point he actually moves to America to try to make it in San Diego, and he can't make it, and he kind of has to come back with his tail between his
Aw.
legs. And
Aw.
at some point, anyway, I won't spoil the end of the story, but it's interviewing him when he's in his 70s about like the life that he's had, and
It's
Oh,
interesting because that must be where they there's a character, a British comedian character, Yorkshireman called John Shuttleworth.
Mhm.
Mm.
And Neil and I have seen him loads of times. He's like extremely eccentric. He so he's like a fictional singer songwriter radio DJ, but he operates well. His shows are on like BBC on Radio 4, but he pretends like he's operating from his back garden.
Mm.
Like
Yeah,
like
his name
from-
was Deke Duncan.
he must so John
Oh.
Shuttleworth must
Deke
have got his-
Duncan.
yeah. He must
He
have got
he
his-
was inspired by Radio Caroline.
Yeah, but John Shuttleworth must have got his idea from him.
From this story.
Yeah. from the
Well, I
story.
mean, BBC actually eventually did a story on him, because I think part of the story was that he applied for a license from the BBC in like the 70s and was rejected. And then somebody along the way, like, much later, heard his story and went and did an investigative journalist report and found him, to tell
Yeah.
the story on the BBC again.
Yeah.
Actually, I just found an archive of him on Facebook.
Well, on a very different note, right after I got fired in 2019, actually that day, I interpreted for a podcast called Pod Save America, which I don't, you guys have maybe heard of that, but they're
Pod Save America?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I didn't really know who they were. And it was right after, it was right when Trump had done yet another idiotic move. And the little girl who went in front of the UN, I shouldn't say little girl, she was 14 at the time, I think.
You mean Greta?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it had just happened like that day.
Yeah.
And so I hadn't even really heard, I mean, I kind of heard a little bit of the rumblings, but then
Yeah.
it's, on at one of the bigger venues in town. And I'm going to do their show again in I think it's in a couple months, but it'll be fun. But I'm going to
Wait,
do,
so okay. I mean, I'm a big enough Pod Save America fan, well, particularly in the Trump era, that like and my dad was too, like we have their merch. My dad has a Pod Save America t-shirt. Like we
Mhm.
were totally into those guys. They're former, they were early day Obama era speechwriters.
Yeah,
That's their
several of them.
background.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so they
Oh,
like,
that guy Favreau, right?
yeah, Favreau, who's dating, Oh, gosh.
I
That's
don't know
right.
about his dating
Different
life.
name.
Oh, well, yeah, he's dating the Pulitzer Prize winning son of Mia Farrow.
Oh, Ronan.
Oh,
Yeah.
Ronan, yeah, Ronan.
Yeah, they're a couple. Not
Oh, I didn't
not
know
John
that.
Favreau, the other John. There's two
Right.
Johns on that show.
Well, and that's the thing. And they could be all brothers. They're
Mhm.
all about the same age. They're
Yeah,
all
they're all
white
like 40
boys.
something
They all
white.
sound exactly the same. So for an interpreter who doesn't really know their material, and they're just like boom, 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 boom. It was fun.
Oh my
But
God.
I'm the
And now
interpreter
Chris
for
is
Dax
putting
Shepard
Sugar
on-
Man in the
What's that?
Well, you were just talking about a good documentaries and
Oh my
for some reason
gosh.
that popped in my head about
Sugar
old
Man
music.
is so
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Oh, that was
Everybody's
such a
seen
good
that,
show.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
That's
so good.
brilliant.
Okay, can I just indulge you with a picture? I found this DJ Deke, his radio. Come
Sure.
on.
Do it.
Because Kate doesn't have Facebook, so she can't see it.
And your tune special.
Oh.
Hello, how are you? Going out right now to Mrs. Teresa Duncan, 57 Gondel Crescent in Stevenage. How in the world are you feeling, my darling? It's 9:40 on 77. These are the OJs.
That's her listening
Is
in
that-
her kitchen. That's his
Is that
wife.
his wife? Oh, that's so funny. She's calling him for dinner.
I'm going to the shops, right, Deke?
Oh, it's so sweet.
Radio 77's ratings could be in for a bad morning now that the station's entire audience has decided to go down the shops. For as long as Mrs. Duncan remains downtown
shop.
Stevenage, her husband, how in the world ya feelin' Deke Duncan, Gonville Crescent's #1 DJ, will be broadcasting exclusively to himself from Studio 1 in the shed at the bottom of the garden. The speaker in the sitting room connects
Anyway,
That's so cute.
so
Oh
the
my God.
podcast is interviewing that guy who's like in his 70s about his life
So
since that
strange to
time.
be able to do that and not have any audience. I mean, it was all kind of fun. I mean, even as a kid pretending to be DJ, but now you can, go to Mixcloud or anywhere and kind of
Yeah,
do it.
I mean, obviously, if this guy was alive now, or if he was
Doing it
broadcasting now, he'd be on TikTok or whatever, right? He wouldn't
But,
be,
yeah,
or he'd
That's
be
what makes
having
it more
his
amusing.
own.
that he just did it for.
But
well,
did you guys have like because here and in Ireland you could get like a temporary license or like a community radio license for like 3 weeks or whatever, and you could like broadcast on a very short wave to like your immediate community or around there.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, community radios we've always had here. I
Yeah.
think. I mean, I don't know if you had to get a license for like if they didn't broadcast past a certain amount, like a school could have a radio, right?
yeah, we had to get a license because we you'd have to apply for a license and so
That's-
we
yeah, you're right. That I was just thinking
I
of
had to
like
do I did quite a bit of community radio in my time, but the really geeky nerdy one was hospital radio. And
Mm.
did you guys have like that? So like every hospital could have its like own radio station, and it would be run by some guy a bit like Deke there, who had been running it for like 40 years with like the same record collection. And
And what do they have on the hospital? Like bad elevator music and what's for
It-
lunch in the cafeteria?
obviously it's got to be quite upbeat and like no songs about death or heartbreak or anything, but in London, my mate Kieran, because we worked in a charity that did a lot of community media and community radio, but he was a complete radio geek, and so he was like on 2 nights a month. He had 2 slots a month on one of the London hospital radio stations, and like he used to get like so nervous about it at work. He'd be like, oh my God, I've got a hospital radio night. And like one night, like I went with him and like kind of sat in and like we had a chat on air, and it was just abysmal. I'd say there were about 5 people in the hospital listening.
All of whom were a captive audience.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's like, oh my God, it was
Wait, but did
hilarious.
you do
Captivated, but-
community radio in Ireland, or did you do it when you were in Swaziland? Like the kind of
No, I
community
did
radio?
community radio in Ireland, and then after by the time I graduated and then had worked for a bit there, Ireland had granted local radio stations licenses, and a lot of those went to the pre-existing community radio stations.
Okay, okay.
Or the pirate stations.
Right.
And so
right.
I ended up working for two sister kind of local radio stations.
Mhm,
That was
That's
my
awesome.
kind of first job.
mhm.
And like I've told you before, Laura, like I told you all before, I called out, I was announcing the deaths. So I was like a newsreader and a local.
Yeah, I guess I was
reader.
thinking that was a more official radio than what I think of as a community radio, but
yeah.
yeah.
It was, but before, but one of my work experience at university was Sligo SCR, Sligo Community Radio.
Oh, it's your hand.
And,
Let's hear.
and where Maynooth, where I was doing one of my postgrads, we had a temporary license for 2 weeks. So I did a report on priests who had left the priesthood to get married, and a couple of other stories that I then went on to sell to RTE Radio, the national broadcaster.
Wow.
Oh,
So that was
wow.
pretty fun, yeah.
So I want to hear your radio voice. You're on SCR. Let's hear. This is Ross. How did you-
We'll have to get her to get an obituary section and read it out to us.
Yeah. And actually, for some weird reason, like I found Midwest Radio on Instagram, and I noticed that like the death notices are still like after, like just after 12 o'clock every day, a minute past 12
Hmm.
and a minute past 6.
Still to this day, they're reading the death notices
Yeah,
on the local radio. Oh my
they're still the
gosh.
most popular thing. Yeah.
Sounds like my hometown newspaper. They have like what they're having for lunch at the Thanksgiving home, and who died, and who's in jail. I always look for my brother, but yeah, who's arrested for doing some drunken and public intoxication or something stupid.
Yeah. Neil always ticks the piss out of our local newspaper and swears that he saw a headline once saying "glove found on wall," but he's making that up, of course. But
I'd say that's probably true, because chances are somebody's like, hey, is it right? Is it red and green? It's mine.
Have we talked about this? Do you all know about Radio Garden?
Mm-mm.
Radio Gardens.
Yeah, radio.garden
Oh no.
will take you to any one of like 40,000 radio stations around the world that have any kind of streaming.
Oh.
and you can
We haven't
spin the
talked about Radio
world.
Garden, but yeah, I know about I mean, we
Oh
would,
yeah, Wallingford Radio just came up in Oxford. I see.
Yeah,
we
and then
would
you can
listen
spin
to
the
that
globe.
in Jakarta. I know sometimes I would
Yeah.
listen to like the LA pop station or things like that. That was kind of fun to turn those on and listen. But I wouldn't have
it's not
remembered it.
secure.
Well, it's not.
That's what my virus is saying.
Ah.
We
Well,
also-
they have an app, and my Apple doesn't mind it. So yeah, it's pretty groovy. It came out of it was some art installation, I think, in the Netherlands just a few years ago. This particular project, if you look into the about section of it all, and it's just fun. You just spin the globe, and then you hone in on some tiny little dot in the middle of Australia, for example. There's this really great pop station out of
Right.
Ayers Rock.
Right. Right.
That's
My
interesting.
niece's boyfriend is in radio in the Netherlands. I'll have to ask him what
Okay.
he knows about it.
Kate, I will send you the link because it's
Yeah,
a little
literally
bit
just
it's a little bit
radio.garden.
unusual. Radio.garden.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also that like I used to work on a big European project which was doing radio campaigns on community radio stations across Europe on HIV and AIDS. This was like 1997 when I came back to Swaziland, and one of the stations was in a place in the Netherlands called Herhugeverd. Herhugeverd.
Sure.
Herhugeverd. I don't know how you say it. Herhugeverd. There it is. That's the link to it anyway. But it was a mixture of like really radical anarchist kind of like Spanish stations and very nice middle-aged retired older people's Dutch radio stations, and then British very, very pop commercial stations, and all kind of having different, obviously different HIV AIDS messages depending on their groups. But I always
Wait,
remember
but HIV was the lowest common denominator, or that was the,
yeah, it was funded by the European Commission, and it was about producing radio information campaigns. So there was a whole radio campaign for young British people going to Spain and Europe interrailing, and so it was called Safe Sex in Europe or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was called. Safe Sex Passage or something. I can't even, no, it wasn't nothing to do with a passage. But it was, yeah. And then there was something for World AIDS Day, and then there were like 4 major campaigns. And then there was a whole bunch of like gay radio stations, and then obviously there were some very conservative like Turkish radio stations in London, so diaspora radio stations. It was great fun. There were a very big motley crew of about 400 stations. But one of our meetings was in Herhugeverd. So I've always remembered the name of the town.
I'm impressed that you could even come up with that name, Rosalind.
Yeah, I've it's one of those names, and and then
You didn't just make that up?
When I've had Dutch friends, I've like, hey, have you ever heard of Herhugeverd? They're like, that's not the way you say it. And I'm like, oh, okay.
But here's the thing, they at least knew what you were saying.
Yeah,
They could at least surmise from the whatever your utterance that
exactly.
it was the name of a village.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Kate, I will send you all 4 of those links that are in the chat. And we will get going today. Let's